All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all glory, praise, and honor to Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakha Kodash, Shanya Kabad, Gadawalu Rukwab, Zakwanyam Nawa. That's double honors to our elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and Shalom, Wabarakim, Labakayam, Shayasharala. And that's peace and blessing to the elect of Israel, and also to the confusion of faces that look like the other nations, but whose spirits resonate with the truth of these scriptures. No matter what color, so-called color of skin you are, if you believe and have faith in the names of Yahweh, or Yahweh Shai, and then to you brothers as well, I want to say Shalom, Wabarakim, peace and blessings, all right? So, without further ado, I'm going to jump right into these articles. I have 4 articles here, and they're all going into prophecy, which is why I'm bringing them out. The Lord set up watchmen, and we believe that we are those prophets and watchmen, starting with our elders and apostles of GMS on down. So I want to jump into a little bit of civil war, these uproars and riots, martial law being declared, economic collapse, U.S. dollar, all for the purpose of bringing in this so-called New World Order by the elites, which will be ushered in by the mandatory chipping of all the people. The mark of the beast, which is a microchip, again, will be made mandatory throughout Babylon the Great, which is America, all right? And the rest of the world. With that being said, we're going to jump right into these scriptures. This is from March 24th. It says, the U.S. dollar falls as trade war anxiety triggers flight to safety. The U.S. currency is weaker against all major pairs as U.S. tariffs targeting China were announced. And we know a tariff is when you pose some kind of tax on an imported good from another nation. So the U.S. dollar was trading higher on Wednesday after the U.S. Federal Reserve hiked interest rates by 25 basis points as anticipated. Fed Chair Jerome Powell was neutral on his first press conference, but the economic projections painted a strong U.S. economy, so they say. The announcement on Thursday of Chinese imports subject to tariffs by the Trump administration drove stock markets lower and put downward pressure on the dollar. The economic calendar will have blah, blah, blah. And again, these are all very, very quick reads. As a matter of fact, the article goes on, as you can see, read full article, but you have to have the app called Seeking Alpha, in which I don't plan on putting that on my phone. But the point is that there's pressure on the U.S. dollar because of this is an upcoming trade war, that being established right now, which America will ultimately lose. But it says, I'm going to harp on the point. It says, the announcement of Thursday of Chinese imports subject to tariffs by the Trump administration drove stock markets lower and put downward pressure on the dollar. Because if you know anything about stocks, you can't jump into a stock. You see, me, I used to day trade. That means I was one of those guys that woke up early in the morning, around 7, 8 o'clock, sometimes even earlier at 6 when I was learning under certain people. And, you watch the stock market's pre-market. As soon as that bell rings, if you're not already in a stock, you want to get into a stock on some kind of momentum. You jump in and you get out. So you buy and you sell. That's called a day trade. You buy and sell a security within the same day. So I would make sometimes between $50 to $100, a day when I would trade. But with that being said, you can't buy a stock based off of emotions. When you do that, you know that you lose. You have to base it off of, volume, volatility. What is the stock doing this day? That's how you day trade. Now, with that being said, a lot of people buy stocks based off of, well, I'll give an example. You have a company we all know like Walmart, right? Let's say Walmart comes out with some kind of fourth quarter earnings. We'll just say as an example. Walmart comes out with good fourth quarter earnings. All of a sudden, that gets released to the people, and then they buy that stock. The Walmart stock goes up, right? With that being said, the Fed is what ultimately controls the markets. It's just people sitting behind a desk that make buttons or that show you numbers that go up and down. These people, the stock market doesn't really tell you what's happening in the economy, more so the emotions and the feelings of the people in the world, in that particular nation or economy, if you will. So a stock will really go up when people say, oh, that company is doing well based off of this article or based off of these stats, those facts. So they buy that company's stock, and then it goes up, right? So that's why it says the announcement on Thursday of Chinese imports subject to tariffs by the Trump administration drove stock markets lower and put downward pressure on the dollar. All of that is because of this next article, because they fear that there's going to be some kind of retaliation coming from China. So this next article, before we get into these scriptures really quickly, it says rate hike forced disappointment. China trade war fears sink U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar fell against a basket of currencies last week. This was written March 24th, driven lower by less hawkish U.S. Federal Reserve, and fears of a trade war after President Trump announced he would initiate sanctions against China. We're going to skip past this and jump right here. It says, Trump slaps China with tariffs. President Donald Trump signed an executive memorandum on March 22nd that would impose retaliatory tariffs on up to $60 billion in Chinese imports. So that's going to severely affect the economy of China. The new measures are designed to penalize China for trade practices that the Trump administration says involve stealing American companies' intellectual property. So they say, but they really want to start World War III. It goes on to read, the dollar weakened on the fear that China is likely to retaliate, against these tariffs by targeting U.S. agriculture products that are reliant on the Chinese export market. And this is how you start a trade war. You import tariffs on the imports of another nation's goods that they severely rely on you for. You see? Now, I thought it was really spiritual because China is going to put tariffs on U.S. agriculture products. Now, we all know when you go to Joel, the 3rd chapter, it talks about World War III. Now, when you jump down to verse 9, it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up the mighty men, talking about these other nations. Let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Now, we know this is talking about these weaker nations. They're going to be it basically is talking about these weaker nations that will be putting money not into food and agriculture anymore, but into weapons of war, which is why verse 10 says to beat your plowshares. Now, we know a plowshare to be a tool of agriculture, into swords. And it says, and your pruning hooks, another tool of agriculture, into spears. The sword and the spear, basically today being the modern day gun, if you have spiritual eyes, right? Tanks and, all these missiles, ICBM missiles, let me put that out there, things like that. We know they're taking their plowshares and their pruning hooks, their agriculture, they're taking away money from agriculture and food, right? Into weapons of mass destruction, into weapons of war, swords and spears, right? So this also, I'm bringing this out because not only does this apply to these other nations, but also to America as well, because we know with martial law and the economic collapse coming to America, we also know that's going to lead to famine, not just famine of the word, which we're looking forward to as well, but also true famine, meaning scarcity of food. So let's go back to that article. It says, the dollar weakened on the fear that China is likely to retaliate against the tariffs by targeting U.S. agriculture products that are reliant on the Chinese export market. This will bring in the economic collapse, this trade war, right? Now, let's also jump over to this new article, which came out March 27th. It's entitled, Red Alert. I thought that was spiritual too. We know Esau, Edom to be the so-called red man, right? Or not to be so-called, he is red, right? It says, Red Alert. We are all being set up. The gun grab is intended to start a civil war followed by UN occupation of America, right? That's that martial law being established. Now it goes on to read. I'm going to skip past. Okay, I'll read the first paragraph. It says, you are watching one of the darkest chapters of history unfold by the hour, complete with Nazi-style fascist Hitler Youth uprising, totalitarian censorship by the techno overlords, and an irrational, anger-fueled nationwide call for government to confiscate all the guns from American gun owners, even if they have to kill those gun owners first, as a North Carolina Democrat suggested just days ago. And that's true. The anti-gun rhetoric and hysteria has reached a whole new level of irrational hysteria, but it's no accident. This is all happening by design. And we know the true design is happening from and by Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Now it goes on to read. I'm going to start right here. It says, Jones, one of the friends of this guy writing the article, the author, it says, Jones told me that InfoWars live broadcast, that's a YouTube page, I believe. Jones told me that InfoWars live broadcasts on YouTube and Facebook were being shut down, and that the student anti-gun marchers were largely organized and paid for by George Soros, a Nazi collaborator, Jones emphasized. And they put in parentheses, it's true, by the way. So this is all a collaboration by the elites. This, huge uproar with these, gun laws, the guns needing to be taken away, right? Salakia. It goes on to read. If you recall, now we're going to skip over that. Right. It says Civil War as a stepping stone to gut America's liberties and enslave its people. And we know they're trying to enslave us with the microchip, but it will be cast down through the Spirit of the Lord. It goes on to read. According to my own research and sources, Jones is absolutely correct. The real goal of the deranged left is not actually to confiscate the guns of 70 plus million Americans, because that's an impossible task that no one would survive for long. Now, this is what I really want to harp on, which they go off a little bit, but they're still on point. The real goal, it goes on to read, it turns out, is to initiate a bloody civil war as a reaction to the gun grab, which is true. Now, this is where they go off, setting the stage for Democrats' demands to occupy America with United Nations troops and overthrow Trump by military force. Now, we know that's not truly the purpose. They're not trying to start a civil war from the gun grab to set up, the stage for Democrats to overthrow Trump. It's not really to overthrow Trump. Now, will the demand to occupy America with United Nations troops come in? Absolutely. Another word for that is called martial law. But what they're really doing, we know through the spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rachakodash, the Holy Spirit, we know that these civil wars are all being started on purpose by the elites for the purpose of starting some kind of, bloody civil war and uproars and riots of the people, which will then combine with the economic collapse of America because of the trade wars and the demise of the U.S. dollar. All these things, the elites are going to say, we need some kind of solution. What are they going to do? They're going to establish martial law. These UN troops will come in, right, from other nations. And then from there, it's going to be the mandating of the microchip. The microchip, which is the mark of the beast, will be made mandatory. It goes on to read, the real plan is to invade America with UN peacekeepers and overthrow this nation by force. Again, you see, all for the purpose of making that microchip mandatory. So we got to bring out the scriptures on that. Brothers already know where I'm going. We bring out this all the time. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 15. I'm going to read starting at verse 14 through 19. It says, woe to the world and them that dwell in it, meaning destruction, right? Woe meaning destruction. For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. And we know the sword to be the modern day gun. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands, meaning guns. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another, meaning robbing. And they shall not regard their kings nor princes, meaning the government, the president, the Congress, the Senate, anybody. So they shall not regard the kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. All out anarchy. A man shall desire to go into a city, and shall not be able. That's martial law. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods, meaning rob them, and spoil their goods, because of the lack of bread, see that famine, and for great tribulation. All these things are coming to America, which is Babylon the Great. Famine and economic collapse, martial law, and then all of a sudden you have the microchip. But again, everything is being spearheaded by these paid for civil wars, with starting with this, with the gun, the grabbing of the guns, right? So, without further ado, that brings me to the last article through the Spirit. It goes on to, this is by Payment Source. It says, Chip and Skin, Payment Matrix Moment. This was written March 27th. It says, microchip implants could be considered the ultimate form of mobile payment, which it will, skipping the smartphone altogether in favor of giving people bionic abilities, because first you had cash, then you had credit cards, now you have smartphone payments where you can just do Apple Pay or I believe Android Pay as well. You don't even need your card. It says, and a small segment of the population is already lining up to try it out. Proponents of the chips argue that implants could drive the future of payments and other smart functions, and that they create conveniences for those who are willing to embrace the technology. Because of course, they're going to try to make it seem like it's some great, the newest technology, right? It's all trickery. It's all witchcraft. Now it goes on to read, last April talks about 3 Square Market from Wisconsin that got 50 people chipped, right? I want to jump down. It says the RFID chips, or the microchip, which is the mark of the beast, are the size of a grain of rice and are implanted in fleshly part of the skin between the thumb and forefinger. Now I'm going to keep skipping to get to the main point. It says from pets to people, right? Now the third paragraph that caught my attention through the Spirit I want to bring out, it says the technology dates to 1987. Now we know our elders and apostles have been on YouTube ever since July of 2007. But prior to that, they've been prophesying and preaching and spreading the word and letting the people know that the microchip is the mark of the beast way before 2007, right? So again, it says the technology dates to 1987 when it was developed for identifying pets and livestock. You see, that's initially so-called what they say, right? After the 9/11 attacks, the chips were modified for human use. After the 9/11 attacks, the chips were modified for human use with the goal of identifying victims and rescue workers, so they say. But that's how you start off anything. Now, what Esau Edom does, which is wicked, is that if they want to test any kind of cure or, we're just going to say, if they want to test for a cure for any kind of like illness or disease, what do? They grab a so-called lab rat or, an ape, which is wicked again, and they run tests on these animals, and then they bring it to humans, right? So now they say this technology for the RFID chip was first created for, animals, but that's not true. All they were doing is testing it on these animals first. They were just testing it on pets and livestock first, all for the purpose of chipping humans later on. If you really do research, you'll see that this was their whole purpose from the very beginning of even fathoming these microchips. It was to put them in humans and to chip the whole world and enslave the entire world. That's the New World Order, the so-called New World Order of the elites, which will ultimately fail because Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai said he will raise a standard. Right? So again, after the 9/11 attacks, and that's spiritual too, because we know that some new so-called terrorist attack is going to happen again, which will ultimately create, more uproars and riots to the people and bringing in martial law and making this microchip mandatory, right? The microchip is going to be the so-called solution. So after the 9/11 attacks, the chips were modified for human use with the goal of identifying victims and rescue workers, ADS told American Banker in 2003. At the time, the company envisioned its technology would be viable for payments in 3 to 5 years. Now, we all know when 9/11 happened. Now, it's way past 3 to 5 years. So these microchips are here, and they're ready to be chipped. Again, I briefly mentioned how that company in Wisconsin, 3 Square Market, I believe, got 50 employees chipped, Now, with that being said, I'm going to jump into scriptures. Brothers already know where I'm going as well. We bring these out all the time, but we must prophesy, even if that means bringing out the same scriptures, because there's constantly new information, happening each day as we go by. There's always new things to talk about. So I'm going to read Revelation 13, verse 16 on down. It says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond." And that he is talking about the so-called white man, which is Esau, Edom. "And he causeth all," meaning everybody, "both small and great." It doesn't matter your status, rich and poor. It doesn't matter how much money you have, free and bond. It doesn't matter if you're working a 9 to 5 out here or if you're incarcerated. It's everybody. "To receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." Now, when you look up that word mark, we all know that's charagma in the Greek, which means an incision. Something is being inserted, which is what? That's that microchip, the mark of the beast, right? It says in their right hand or their foreheads, "and that no man might buy or sell, save he," meaning except he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him, because truly the name of the beast and the number of his name, that all goes into, worshiping this system, being a part of this system, which will lead you into getting and receiving the mark of the beast, right? "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And we know that to be 666. All right. So again, all these prophecies we're hoping and we're looking for and we're praying that they all happen this year, if not at least early 2019. But again, we're praying that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai comes back this year and that all these prophecies are fulfilled this year in 2018. We still got plenty more months to go. So we'll see and continue to, through the Spirit, prophesy. And, with that being said, civil war is definitely coming. More uproars and riots are coming to, Babylon the Great, which is America, which will usher in, a martial law with the decline of the U.S. dollar because of the trade wars, which will make World War III happen. And then what? Over here, ultimately, martial law and then the mark of the beast will be made mandatory, which is the microchip. All right. So, look out for all these things. Wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy time and strength of thy salvation. All right. Isaiah 33:6. So I pray that this was edifying, and I want to give all glory, praise, and honor to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai Ba'ashem Rachakodash. And I want to say Shanya Kabad, Gadawala Requabs, Aquanium Nawa. That's double honors to our elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and Shalawam, Mabarakim, Labakariam, Shayasharala. And that's peace and blessing to the elect of Israel. Keep watching and keep prophesying, Akim. All right, Shalawam.